Hello and welcome to another episode of the Franchise Tag Overtime. I'm Gareth Smith, and today I'm joined by Orlando Guardians wide receiver Andrew Jamiel. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you very much for coming on speaking to me today. I do appreciate that you are right now in very much into the season, and the opening week of the XFL is in the books. Now, it didn't go your way opening week, but how did you feel after that opening game?
I felt a lot of emotions because, number one thing, we want to win. We all want to win.
Yeah,
So initially, disappointed, and we know we didn't do enough to win. But it was my first, professional game on national TV. So individually, it felt good to get out there and make some plays. But same thing. I always want to do more to help us win. So a lot of mixed emotions.
and you obviously had a good game yourself. You were the lead receiver in the opening game. Bearing in mind, you've got some well-known names in that wide receiver and tight end room with Cody, with Eli. To get 80
hmm
yards receiving for yourself, how big was that for an opening game for you?
It felt great. It felt great. I just want to do my job every single play, and a lot of times my job is to make the big play. So,
Yeah.
um, football is the most team-oriented game there is, man. And the O line, you know, on my catches, they protected QBs, put it right on me, and it was overall just a good play. So it definitely felt good to get that under my belt for game one.
And obviously, it was very unusual for us fans watching the XFL. We are used to bit of secrecy in a lot of, I'd say the best way of describing it. We don't hear play calls. You don't hear much on the sidelines. How interesting was it yourself knowing that there was literally mics around you the whole day?
You know, that's something I try not to really think about
Yeah,
because that kind of takes away from me being zoned in on my job. I will say I don't feel the need to worry about it because, as players on this team, we've been trained to be first class professionals.
yeah.
So, I feel like I didn't have much to worry about in terms of, being mic'd up for the fans or anything like that. I'm just so zoned into the game, man. I try to block everything out, but it was super cool. Just, the coverage ESPN had for the game. It's
Oh.
awesome. And I can't wait for, the other ones.
And did you get much of a chance to watch any other games that went on over that weekend?
Of course I did. Yeah, it was awesome. It was awesome to see.
And so obviously there was the other games in question, particularly it was interesting with the rules that they've brought out for the XFL. It was interesting
hmm
seeing, for example, in the St. Louis game versus the Brahmas, who you have this weekend, that the first
Yeah.
successful 4-15 in the fourth quarter, which doesn't half open up games to know that there's no such thing as truly over as a game. How interesting is that as an offensive player to know that you're never truly out of any game?
It's awesome. I mean, in game one, even though late in the third quarter we were being outplayed, after we scored our second touchdown,
Mm,
despite everything that was going on, it was still a two-score game. Knowing that we could get some three-point conversions, like the game is still very within reach. Um, so I mean, that's just the beauty of the XFL, and you saw what St. Louis did with it, and they
yeah.
they got a win by taking advantage of the rules. So um, it's super cool, and I know everyone else that was watching loved it too. It was all over Twitter and all over the news. It got a lot of good buzz this past weekend, so it's
It
awesome.
it did, and I'll be honest, I was all over Twitter the weekend tweeting about it, just because it was just so interesting to see. Particularly, what I found really interesting is
It's
the
great.
transparency of the refereeing. Um,
Yeah.
Bearing in mind, like, so I'm an Eagles fan in the NFL, and so referees,
Oh
and
man.
so the referees aren't my favorite people in the NFL right now. But what they showed with any call with Dean Blandino and the refs, the reviews, because particularly
Right.
the Cody Latimer touchdown, it was one of those where was it a touchdown, was it an interception? But what was really refreshing was hearing the honesty of them going, the on-field play was this. We don't have enough to overturn it. Whereas in the NFL, they make
Right.
that a mystery as to why a
hmm
decision is given or not given. Do you think that's something the
hmm
NFL can learn from the XFL?
100%. And I know the XFL commissioner and the higher ups have had conversations with the NFL and partnerships, within the league. So I most definitely think that, that's maybe one of the things that the NFL will take away from the XFL. Definitely.
And I say it was just really interesting, particularly hearing them talking about decisions. Because I'll be honest with you, there's a certain decision I would really like to have heard the conversation of only a couple of weekends ago in the fourth quarter of that game. There's one
Yeah.
decision particularly
Right.
I
Right.
really want to hear the rationale
Yeah. Of
behind.
course.
But the opening drive went really well for yourselves. The offense looked like it was really clicking. So what do you think Houston did that stopped your offense, or was it more just not quite being on the same page yet as an offensive unit?
Yeah, I mean, Houston didn't do anything different. They played their defense. They pretty much did what they do all game, and I think it's on us as an offense that we just didn't execute. The rest of the game, we had flashes. The first drive was great, but you live and you learn. There's so many things that go into it, and there's excuses everybody could make, but bottom line is we just didn't execute.
No, and it's
But we live and we learn.
no very much, and it's obviously all about because the one thing obviously that a lot of think like you did see some criticism of the XFL for week one, but what people need to realize is you as teams have been together 5 weeks, 6 weeks.
Right. That's it.
And
That's it.
there's going to be these things where the offensive lines don't quite have the protection schemes right yet,
Most definitely.
and these things take time. Usually, if you look at the NFL, early weeks in the season sometimes can be quite rough for teams that have had
Yeah.
preseason games, full training camps. So the standard for what is in effect a fledgling league, I thought was surprisingly good for, and it wasn't as what I was expecting to see more mistakes than what I saw, if that made sense.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, definitely. Of course.
And
I mean, in these kind of leagues, a lot of times the defenses are a little bit ahead of the offense early on in the season because, like you said, we've only been here for 5 weeks, and offense is all based off of, chemistry and knowing, things about each other on the field, details, stuff like that.
and how's the relationship going with the wide receivers? Because what's the one thing, like, because I say Eli on, I've had Cody on. I said the one thing that Orlando I felt did better than probably most of the teams was in the wide receiver room. I think you've got a really talented bunch there in Orlando. How is the relationships going and being built right now?
Couldn't be better, man. I love these guys, and I've only known them for a couple of weeks, and I feel like I've known them my whole life. Especially guys like Cody and Eli that have had success in the NFL. For a guy like me that's never played in the NFL, being able to watch and learn from them every single day is a blessing. And off the field, man, these guys are awesome, and it just makes it that much easier to play for one another, knowing that, we all mesh together.
And now Eli, especially, I say, is such a likable bloke. He's one of those people where afterwards you just end up chatting to him for a bit afterwards, and I just found him such a likable guy. And the leadership, those guys, particularly bearing in mind you've got one guy in there who has a Super Bowl ring from his time in the NFL. How much are you being a sponge around those guys and learning off their knowledge?
More than you can imagine, man. I ask them every question I got because, I'm a football fan, and I grew up watching the NFL, watching college and high school football, and I love it. So, I'm asking Cody any question you can imagine, man. Asking him, he's played in all 32 NFL stadiums. So, like I said, man, I'm just asking him questions, whether it's on the field directly related to football or off the field, just in terms of being an NFL player. So I definitely am blessed that I got these guys on my team.
And how did it feel to be able to say that you played a professional game as a professional athlete? How did it feel to be able to say that that first game was done and you are officially a professional athlete?
It gives me chills thinking about it, and I'm kind of numb to it because I'm so in the moment right now. And that's sort of something I'll look back and reflect on after the season. But for a kid from a small town in Massachusetts that had no Division I offers, and played Division II, and then played in 2 other smaller leagues before this just to get here. I mean, it's awesome, man. It's undescribable.
And obviously, you mentioned obviously coming into the XFL. How did the opportunity come about for yourself? Because a lot of guys that I've spoke to that you mentioned have done these like other D2s or have been to these other leagues. How did the opportunity come about for
Hmm.
you?
Well, before any of this was even in the works, I remember my senior year of college, I was watching the XFL on TV, and I told myself, of course the NFL's plan A, but I think the XFL would be an amazing plan B. I'd
Yeah,
love to play in the XFL. It looks awesome. Sure enough, whatever happened with COVID in the league, and once it came back around, and I knew The Rock was the commissioner, and you know, I wanted to figure out how I could get in. And I was playing in the fan controlled football league, which
yeah,
is arena football essentially. Um, I had a ton of success in both my seasons in that league, and our offensive coordinator here, Coach Robert Ford, he was one of the coaches for the Fan Control Football
mm,
League. So I knew him. My quarterback in the Fan Control League was DeAndre Francois, and
yeah.
um, so there was open combines for the XFL. I went to the combines, and then teams had their own individual workouts. And I knew Coach Ford was coaching for Orlando. I knew Francois was wanted to play quarterback for Orlando. Um, so I went to the workouts, had success, um, and they took a liking to me and my game. So it's all just working out how it's supposed to.
And you mentioned there DeAndre Francois, who is a guy who knows Orlando probably better than anyone else on the roster, having spent a
Definitely.
lot of his childhood there. How helpful has he been
Right.
with in getting you used to life in Florida and Orlando?
So we actually stay in Dallas, Texas for the whole season.
Oh,
The
right.
entire XFL league stays in Dallas. So we haven't even been to Orlando. Our first time will be this weekend.
Which obviously
But I
opening
will
get
say,
because he's going to obviously know the city better than anyone else because he's lived there for
right.
a long period of his life. I know he's originally a Miami boy and then moved over to Orlando. But it's going to be interesting to go over to Orlando this week, bearing in mind like it's the first home game as well
Hmm.
against the Brahmas. Um, what are you most looking forward to about that home game?
There's a lot of things I'm looking forward to. First and foremost, getting a win at our stadium in front of our fans. That's first and foremost. Um, second, just being in the environment and being in the moment. I mentioned our fans. I just playing in Houston last weekend was amazing to me because I've never played in front of a crowd that big.
Yeah.
And even though they weren't cheering for us, it made the game so much more fun to be in that environment. So I can't wait to go play hard on our home field in Orlando and just know that this is our home stadium. So it's going to be a surreal feeling.
And it's going to be interesting, well, with Orlando being in effect a new franchise to the XFL, whereas Houston, where you played last week, had not a massive established fan base. They had a fan base from XFL 2.0, and they are still unbeaten as a franchise in their history now. But how interesting is it going to be to see what the fan base is looking like in Orlando? Bearing in mind, this is a brand new franchise.
Right. It's real interesting. I'm not sure what to expect, honestly. Maybe I'll kind of lowball it in my head. So that way, when I get there and there is a ton of people,
Yeah.
I'm excited. So, but I hope they come out. But at the end of the day, man, we got to give them something to see. We got to win. We
Yeah.
got to win games for them and get the city behind us.
Well, to be fair, from what I've seen, this ticket sales do look like they're going fairly well. To be fair,
Oh, really?
um,
Okay,
I
great.
I think Orlando, and I've said this when I've spoken to some of the guys from Orlando. I think Orlando, to be fair, has a real chance to become them. Vegas, I think, have a massive advantage over the rest of the league for the international fan base. There's two cities in the whole of the XFL, which is really easy for us international fans to get to. Orlando and
Yeah.
Vegas for obvious reasons. A certain mouse makes people want to go to Orlando, and Vegas for other reasons that people go there.
Right.
How important do you think international fans could be to attendances in Orlando?
Extremely important, man. It's just amazing because we're playing on, a national stage. And for people to not only watch it on TV, but be able to come and support us live and cheer and we can interact with them, before and after the games. It just makes the whole thing special. And that's how football should be played.
Yeah.
Everyone loves football and it brings people together and it makes people happy. So it would just be amazing. I hope we do have the best fan base in the XFL.
And it's going to be interesting to say when it comes to the XFL, because not many leagues are worldwide from the first game,
Right.
which your games are broadcast. I think it was on 170 countries that said it was or something for the opening game. I say I watched in the UK. There's people in Australia, Germany, you name it, have all watched it. How interesting is it for yourself to know that you are now playing in a worldwide known league?
You know, like I said, words can't describe it. You know, I mean, a lot of these guys have already played in the NFL. They played at these big time schools, so they had been here before, and I know they still appreciate it. You know, playing now in the XFL, but you know, for a kid like me or any other small school guys, for it being our first time, it's amazing. And you know, I try to find the right balance of not really thinking about it, not really caring about it too much because I have to focus on my job. But you know, when I sit back and really reflect on the whole thing, it's the most amazing feeling in the world. You know, just there's a lot of, you know, kids out there that would kill to be doing what I do, and you know, I was that little kid looking up to these professional athletes. So it's just the whole thing's amazing.
And obviously, this weekend you're up against the Brahmas, who had what was nowhere wording this any differently, other than it was a devastating loss for them the weekend, in effect losing in the final 2 minutes their whole lead.
Yeah.
And St. Louis showed how these new rules in effect could be exploited. Was there much you took from that game, from what you've been watching, about ways in which you could see you could potentially harm and get some points on the board this week?
Most definitely. You know, most definitely. That's a huge part of football is preparing. And our coaches do a great job of preparing us, and us as players, you know, we take accountability to watch the guy you're going to be going against, whether it's special teams, offense, defense. You got to know your opponent and study them. You know, we don't watch film, we study it.
Yeah.
So, you know, game one, it was hard because we didn't know what to expect.
Yeah.
But now that we have some film on the opponent, and it's definitely an advantage, but we know they're doing the same for us. So it kind of keeps you on your toes.
No, and that's, I think, was what was really interesting a bit about week one. Don't get me wrong, I know some coaches, you knew a little bit about their tendencies. For example, everyone knew that Houston, what defense they were going to play, because, as I say, it was named after the coach's father. I think he said it was originally, and obviously it's hit a defense he's deployed his career. But the likes of how that the offenses were going to run on each of these teams, what the individual players, the sheer chemistries at this point of how early it was always going to be an interesting one. It's going to be an evolving season to see which teams take the momentum and learn each week and which teams struggle. So it's going to be an exciting season all around. And obviously this weekend, we want fans to be packing out the stadium. XFL.com/tickets. Season tickets are still available, and individual game tickets. Prices are extremely reasonable. So make sure you get out there and check out the game this week. Cheer on Andrew and the rest of the Guardians, hopefully to victory. But thank you very much for your time today. Truly appreciate it. Hopefully get you on again after your first touchdown reception of the season. Bring the ball in with you, obviously, because, you know, I'm sure you're keeping that. But no, thank you very much for your time today. I truly appreciate it, and hopefully speak to you again soon. But thank you everyone for listening as well. We'll be back again soon with another very special guest.